Question on Face Off tonight. Is it time for Team Anna to back off, considering the Standing Committee on Law and Justice has tabled its Lokpal report with dissenting notes, leaving it to the wisdom of Parliament to determine the final. Right, joining us tonight, Srivatsa Krishna, research scholar, and Prashant Bhushan, lawyer, member of Team Anna and member of the Joint Drafting Committee. Mr. Prashant Bhushan, the question tonight is that once the report has been tabled in Parliament with dissenting notes, why not leave it to the wisdom of Parliament?
No, that's because the report makes recommendations which would make a virtually useless Lokpal institution, which will neither be independent of the government, which will neither be empowered to investigate corruption from top to bottom, which will be hampered by not having its own independent investigative machinery and having to rely on an investigative machinery which is under the administrative control of the government. So, and there are many other problems. So what's the use of making a Lokpal like this? And unless we forewarn the people of this country, the political parties and members of Parliament that this is what the Standing Committee has proposed, which will make for a totally useless body, then even the members of Parliament are not going to do what is required, which is to make changes, make further changes and bring a proper, strong, effective Lokpal institution which will be effective in investigating and dealing with corruption.
You're saying the government needs the India Against Corruption team to keep them straight, in a sense. I'd like to get Srivatsa Krishna in. You've been a critic of Team Anna as it's known. Prashant Bhushan making that point that unless they keep the pressure on, unless Anna Hazare comes to Delhi, unless there's the fast, unless there's the rallies, the government is simply going to pass a watered-down bill.
So, Asni, I'd like to preface what I'm going to say by mentioning that I'm here in my personal capacity and not as an IAS officer. I'm not against Team Anna keeping up its pressure. Far from being a critic of Team Anna, many things I've supported them. But there are a few specific things where I think the steps they've taken and the strategy they are following is not right at all. For instance, exclusion of the C&D employees. I think the size of the institution that they propose by having C&D employees within the ambit of Lokpal will kill the idea completely. So I think the Government Standing Committee has done a fantastic thing by keeping them under the CVC, who will in turn be reporting into the Lokpal. So I think that's a good thing. You cannot have a policeman for every citizen in the country. If there is some corruption going on in any private sector entity, and if the CEO of a company finds out about it, he will sack the guy. Likewise, if the Team Anna's pressure ensures that we have a clean top, the top will ensure that the bottom is clean. You cannot have a policeman policing every executive engineer, every constable, and even if you do, where are you going to find these people from? So I think in that regard, what the Standing Committee has proposed is damn good. The second point I'd like to make is on NGOs. I think it's a very good thing. At the time of elections, massive amount of money comes in through NGOs and trusts which spring up overnight only for the period of election and then disappear. And so when the Standing Committee says that NGOs which receive donation over 10 lakhs should be investigated, these are all the instrumentalities of large-scale corruption which should very well be investigated under the Lokpal.
Right, different ways of dealing with the same problem, but the trouble, Prashant Bhushan, is that many believe that the stand that you're taking is it is either our way or it's the highway, and that's really the problem. You're not allowing space for a larger discourse to develop over what can possibly be more effective at the end of the day.
There is every kind of discourse which has been going on in this country. We have been saying what we feel is required and needed for an effective Lokpal institution. So far as this Group C&D employees are concerned, all inspectors, etc., it's really the Group C level employees who are at the cutting edge of corruption which is faced by the common man today.
Right.
And very often this corruption or this corrupt money goes right up to the top. Right. Now, if what the Standing Committee has proposed is to be allowed, then what they are saying is first you start the investigation under the CVC. Now the CVC has no investigative machinery. They have only 200 and some officers, and if the CVC can investigate all these so-called 57 lakh members of Group C and D, then why can't the Lokpal?
Prashant Bhushan, the fact is you are still talking about the exact proposals in this draft, but the fact is it's come through a huge process. The nation has watched. The nation's even listened as we got transcripts. CNN got those transcripts of your meetings. The fact is there have been rounds and rounds of discussion with the government. The Parliament Standing Committee has now deliberated, come up with a draft. The question we're asking tonight is not whether you approve of Section 1, 2 or 3 of that draft, but at what point does your team, does India Against Corruption, in a sense, allow Parliament to take over?
No, Parliament
Or
is
does
certainly
Parliament
doing
does Parliament always need supervision?
Will be doing whatever it thinks fit. They will do whatever they want, but does that mean that the people of this country should go to sleep? That the people of this country should not express their views about what they want Parliament to do? Does it mean, I mean, does democracy mean that those who get themselves elected once in 5 years have the license to do whatever they please without reference to the wishes of the people? Is that the kind of democracy that we want? That more than every survey, every opinion poll, every referendum is showing that more than 80% people in this country want a bill like the Jan Lokpal bill, and yet this government brings a bill which is totally contrary to that, yet the standing committee produces a report which is totally contrary to that, and you expect the people of this country to just take this lying down quietly and just swallow all this insult to the people of this country?
And there will be one more dharna on Sunday as well, Prashant Bhushan. You're making it very clear that you're going to keep going. Srivatsa Krishna, your reaction to that?
I think, well, the pressure and any kind of moral pressure kept on for the right aspects of the Jan Lokpal bill, and there are many of them, is absolutely welcome. But pressure on everything, you know, my way or highway on every single issue is not warranted. It's just going to end up killing the overall objective, which is to have a corruption-free society by and large. I'll give you one example. In the program before this, you had S.K. Derry, one of the finest firefighters I've known. I've worked with him. Tell you that there are already existing laws. Those laws are not being implemented properly. Now, if you're going to ensure that every single fireman in this country is going to be policed by the Jan Lokpal to ensure that if he has water in his fire tank, will he show up whether the fire is not going to work? Instead, if the chief of fire and the man above that, the minister in charge of that, are kept accountable, they have an incentive then to ensure that every fireman is honest and does his job.
Krishna, do you believe that at the end
point I'm making.
Krishna, do you believe that at the end of the day, if the final report is not word for word what Team Anna has proposed, they're not going to accept it? I'm putting that to both Prashant Bhushan and Krishna.
No, we are not saying that the report has to be word for word what we are saying. What we are saying is that the Lokpal institution which is made must be totally independent of the government.
Do you ever see a compromise happening, Krishna, on this?
Must go.
Well, I think the independence of the Lokpal depends on several things. It depends on the search of who the Lokpal is eventually going to be. I think there's not been enough thought given to that. The Jan Lokpal's provision on who should be on it versus what the government draft and what the parliamentary committee are saying are completely different. Not for a moment. I've been saying this for a very long time, that everyone is debating the sinews of the bill without ensuring that who will become the Lokpal. And I think there again, what the parliamentary committee has said, they have tried to bring in a large cross-section of people in the search committee. It should be acceptable.
Right, Prashant Bhushan, still no clarity.
At all.
Still no clarity on who your candidate for the Lokpal is.
No, we are not proposing any candidate. What we are proposing is a robust and transparent selection system. So we are suggesting a very broad-based selection committee consisting of very few politicians and people from the government and mostly independent statutory authorities, several judges, etc. But those judges must be selected by all the judges, by a collegium of all the judges of the Supreme Court, rather than by the Chief Justice alone.
And that's of course only a future battle that still has to be. that's still a future battle that has to be fought first. We're going to get through this draft. Prashant Bhushan, Srivatsa Krishna, thanks so much for joining us on Face Off here on India at 9. So it certainly seems it's going to be a busy weekend. Anna Hazare coming to Delhi once again.